Welcome to a Girl in the Product World podcast, dedicated to hearing the stories of the amazing people working in product across so many different industries. People who are building world-class products. People who inspire me. So join me on this podcast, A Girl in the Product World, inspiring me, inspiring you. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of A Girl in the Product World. I'm your host Amna, and today I am joined by a very, very special guest, Ziad. Ziad is the Chief Product Officer at Ramp, which is a fintech who are building amazing and convenient crypto solutions. He has a huge amount of financial servicing experience, most notably working for the Boston Consulting Group, Credit Karma, and now Ramp. Ziad also holds a BA in economics from the American University of Beirut and an MBA in entrepreneurial management from the Wharton Institute in Philadelphia. He joins me today to talk to us about his awesome journey and the world of crypto as a CPO. Ziad, welcome.
Thank you, Amna. Good to be on your podcast.
It's so lovely to have you here. Let's dive straight into the questions because I want the audience to know all about what you do, and you've had a very interesting journey. So please, could you share with us your journey thus far in your career?
Absolutely. I'm going to try to not do a long monologue. I started in consulting, as you mentioned, at the BCG based in Dubai. Even though I didn't like it initially, I was kind of stuck into financial services. I really ended up enjoying the field, whether it was insurance, banking, private banking, commercial banking. At that point in time, it was interesting to see some great technological trends happening back in 2008, 2009, 10. And I figured that the intersection of technology and finance would be very interesting to do. Somehow found my way in the States, where I felt San Francisco and the Bay Area would be a great place to have this intersection. And so the MBA for me was an excuse to move to the US, or like a passport to be able to tap in that career. And through that journey, through discovery, I realized that product probably is the right thing for me because not only do I like consuming the technology, I like to build it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And product is all about building. The way I got into product is initially away from fintech into gaming, because for someone who didn't have a computer science background back in 2011, 12, it was really hard to get into product. And so the only companies that were willing to bet on non-technical product managers were gaming companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very fortunate to join an up-and-coming mobile gaming company called Kiwi, which was based in Palo Alto, and with a strong thesis around social games on Android. That was a great experience. Learned tons, learned the craft, worked with engineering, designers, artists, did the up and down, worked on new games that scaled, did zero and millions of dollars, were the roller coaster of technology, and decided that with that skill set, I wanted to focus more on the field that was interested in, which is fintech. And somehow, through the connections of friends and the network, landed at Credit Karma, which at that point in time was much smaller than it is today. It was roughly around 300 people, based in San Francisco. I joined initially to figure out engagement, basically like how do we move the company from a just like a one-trick pony. People come in, check their credit score, and then they leave, to actually building a relationship with the product, being able to get more value from the product. And that ended up being an amazing experience, across product, marketing, analytics, data science, figuring out how to bring all these things together to build deeper interactions with customers, but also drive significant impact on the business in terms of monthly active usage, daily active usage, frequency, depth of engagement. And using that experience, I had the opportunity to move to London with Credit Karma when the business wanted to expand internationally, and the UK was the first adventure outside our borders. And so I was chosen to kind of go there and be the head of product, and the part of the co-founding team with one of Credit Karma's co-founders and one of the earliest engineers. So that was kind of the co-founding team for Credit Karma UK. From head of product and building the product team, end up running the business in the UK before expanding from UK to Canada, and then being the GM of Canada UK. And while doing the GM role, I was also still head of product for a while. So I was still very much a CPO while driving the business overall. And then from there, found myself into in Ramp, where I wanted to like do a different flavor of fintech,
Mm.
something which is more exciting, probably something that I don't know as much of, and I wanted to really have a steep learning curve from a domain knowledge perspective, and that's how I ended up here.
That is so cool, and especially your time at Credit Karma, because yeah, I think it's so fun when you are part of that kind of founding team. And I've certainly found that like my experience in startup is like no other. But you said something at the beginning. I mean, that you said a lot there that I want to dive into. Now you mentioned when you initially got into fintech, you didn't quite like it, but then you grew to love it. And I've had quite a similar experience. And I think when you tell people that you're in fintech, they find it to be kind of this ring fenced area that you can't really go into unless you do come from a certain background, or you've got a number of years of experience within financial services before going into the technology side. What made that shift happen for you, that you were like, I actually love this, this is great?
So I thought initially I thought financial services is going to be a dry subject,
Mm,
and doing it at larger banks felt really dry. And when the innovation was all about quote unquote digitization or digital, I didn't find that exciting because
mm,
ultimately what they were doing is trying to um, bring technology into an old institution rather than actually rethinking from scratch how to do things in a different world. It's as if like when the internet started, people were just copying and pasting their menus on their website for restaurants. Or, for example, when mobile started,
yeah,
people were like saying, "Oh, we're just going to take their website and like squish it in one screen," and they were missing the point of mobile, like they were missing the point of the internet initially. And I felt like with big institutions, that's what they were doing when they're trying to digitize. But fintech is different. Fintech is effectively trying to use technology to reinvent the wheel,
mm,
not to just like make it right or make it smooth or try to like make it more attractive. It's actually like maybe make it run differently or better in a significant way, not in an iterative way. And that's a challenge that I like more than being part of a larger bank to trying to see how we can integrate technology into it.
yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love it. And I'm so happy you've had such a positive experience as well. And obviously have made such a huge impact. Now, Ziad, you have worked in fintech for over 8 years now. We've just heard about, like I said, the impact that you've had and all the work that you've done. How has it changed over the years? And I think more importantly, what do you think will be the next big thing that we need to look out for?
Yeah, things have changed a lot. I think in this world, but in a very positive way. I think the trend has been to have more intelligence and more ownership in the world, and more proactivity and um, more things done for you. So like when I joined fintech, for example, financial products financial products were like more in the personal finance management
Mm,
world. So like the PFMs, um, Mint was up and coming in the US, and it was like great, you can connect all your bank account and you can see your budget, right? It was just consuming information.
mm,
You were not necessarily given an action. You're not necessarily knowing how to change things.
yeah.
um, it was very much like you were reading information. And I think that the movement now is there's intelligence on top of this information. So there's like the so what. Not there's only the so what. There's also the action being done on your behalf. So, oh great, I'm not earning as much money on my deposits here. Now there are products that are telling you, hey, we can sweep it from one bank to the
Mm,
other bank and get you 5%. So instead of just telling you like you're not earning, or like just telling you like here's your what you have in your bank account, the level of intelligence, the level of things done for you is now just increasing. And whether you want to call it AI, whether you want to call it, other stuff, it's just basically this is like more of it, more assistance, more intelligent assistant for things that would used to take us spreadsheets and thinking and time. are just being more done easily on our behalf. And I think that's where the trend is going. So if you think about that for PFM, how do you extrapolate it for other aspects of financial services? Whether it's insurance, like why do I need to renew my insurance every year? Is there a place where, and my information is uploaded automatically and things happen more magically? Or for example, with auto insurance, like, hey, my driving information is actually a great input for my insurance policy. Can that be like tracked using my devices and then fed into my policy so we can have better pricing? So like instead of just saying you, hey, you're a good driver, but your insurance cost is this, we can start bringing this thing together,
Mm.
and there's more intelligence basically in the way we provide services to customers.
Okay, amazing. And in terms of what will be kind of the next big thing, so I think yes, there's a big thing around what can we expect. I think it's already happening. Where can we see our data being used and how it's being used? And I think there's a lot more awareness around that. Where do you feel like, as a consumer within fintech, or being impacted with financial services, where do you think I think customers will feel that most, given obviously particularly in this economy that we're in?
Yeah, I would say like the um, the two trends I think that are really interesting. One is around, let's say, what I'm calling intelligence or like AI.
Mm,
Um, it's basically things that are being done more efficiently, better, faster, quicker. So that's just more impact on people. So, for example, someone tell you like you have money sitting here that is not earning interest at the same time, interest rates are like 4 to 5%.
yeah.
That's money being basically invested for you and returned for you. Or if I'm able to give you a recommendation to save money on your insurance policy when you're paying sometimes multiple hundreds of pounds a year, this is 10%, 20% are big savings in for people, right? Or like if I used to do my taxes, now there's services that are doing it for me with more
Mm,
speed, more efficiency because they're able to do things better. That's just time that I'm saving that I'm not doing here that I can be investing somewhere else. All of these things are like assistances and smart way of assisting you to put more money in your pocket or to make your time use more efficiently so you can actually put your time in better usage and way
mm,
to can earn more money or just rest potentially as well.
no.
The other trend I think is around ownership. I think something that for me attracts me about blockchain technology is the ownership piece.
Mm,
Uh, and in a world where we've seen financial collapses multiple times happen, we've seen, for example, with the FTX, when company that hold custody of your assets goes bust, your assets go bust, right? Or recently with SVB in the US, when a bank goes, under, if the government doesn't intervene, your money will go, right? This is where
yeah.
you have FCSS in the UK or FDIC insurance in the US, but without these, there wouldn't be insurance. Now, I think technology can give you that insurance, can give you that ownership, and this is where like blockchain technology actually is a great way to give you that ownership and protect you from the downside.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. So a lot more ownership and I think a lot more speed there as well, which is incredibly important. And I'm very glad you mentioned blockchain there because that's part of my next question. So you've had a very exciting few months and you've recently joined Ramp as CPO. So congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
It also means that you've entered the world of crypto, blockchain, and Web3. Could you explain to the audience as plainly as possible what they are and why we should all be interested in them?
Yeah, this is like a very tricky question because it can get you down in rabbit holes. The way I personally like to think about it is maybe in contrast, instead of like defining it by itself. So I think crypto, blockchain, Web3 are like synonymous, used synonymously right now for different to mean
Mm,
different things. The way I personally like to think about it is like a different type of internet, where things are organized differently. So I'll use two examples. You know, Maybe the first one is the bank because we were just talking about banking in general and custody. So imagine a world where instead of having one or two people or corporations having custody of your information or your assets, this information or those assets are owned by you. you have the custody, you have the keys for them. If the corporations go bankrupt or go bust, you're not losing your assets, because the way they're organized is in a way that you keep the key for it and you have custody over it.
Right.
Similarly, think about, as another example, like think about networks today that we use constantly, like a Facebook or an Instagram. We think we have our own account with Facebook and Instagram, but actually, like, let's say Facebook changes their policy. For some reason, we were affected by that policy, or for some reason, let's say a new company wants to come, or maybe Facebook wants to take your username. They can take
Yeah.
your username, and that's it. It's their network. The network is Facebook's network that we're using. It's not ours, right? And so if they decide to change their policy to take it, they can just take it, and there's nothing to do about it. Similarly, the way Facebook and Google and others use their network to make money is through ads. Now, the way they make money is by having more people basically being engaged in their platform. So we as users are creating the engagement. So we're creating the assets, we're creating the content that other people are consuming, but we're not getting a share of the revenue of those ads. They're 99.999%, except for some exceptions with YouTube and some others, where there's some revenue share with creators. All that revenue is in basically the pockets of the owners and the creators of the network. So blockchain is probably better, like is a different version based of the network, where things are more distributed, where ownership is at the individual level, where there's not like one or two companies that own it. It's actually like a distributed ownership. There's no one owner. If someone goes bust or changes, they can't really change the policies, because policies are like transparent and open, and that's where people opt into it. So that's the new world that we're entering in. It's the contrast with an old world today that we are very accustomed to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not giving us as much control or ownership, as and with that basically comes financial return and stability and trust, basically, in that system.
Okay, so based on what you said, let's say in the future there is a content platform like YouTube. So what you're saying is if we're using blockchain and I'm a user on that platform, I could then have a revenue share of ads if that is their main revenue stream.
Potentially, if that's what the network is supposed to do. So basically, the way it would work is, let's say a blockchain based YouTube. It's a very funny exercise to think about this, but you can basically like program it in a way to say, the person who uploads the video uh, knows very clearly that the way this would work is, if I upload the video, and my video basically creates XYZ in terms of engagement, and that engagement creates ABC in terms of revenue, I'm gonna get paid X% of that revenue. That's coded. That's actually written it down. And
Yeah.
so because it's written down in software, it just runs itself. There's no like there's no subjectivity in it. It's very like zeros and ones. And if that's the base of this new YouTube, for example, whenever my videos are running, if the software starts executing, and so if viewership creates engagement, creates revenue, then the code will run as it is, and then I will get a share of that. And so it's created, so that transparency means what people would want to opt into those types of networks, because they are very clear, and they feel like they have ownership stake into them. Now the way this could get paid is going to be probably through a token that this network will generate. And this is, for example, what today people refer to as crypto or cryptocurrencies, are these remunerations that those blockchains create for participants in them.
Right. Okay. So that was going to come into my next part, which was crypto. So cryptocurrency versus real currency. What's this all about?
uh, it's well, that's another rabbit hole for us, I would say. uh, like currency at the end of it is what it's basically trust, right? It's basically, I'm gonna give you a piece of paper, and it's kind of an IOU, right? And as long as I trust that there's value behind it, I can use it, right, to do something else. And the beauty of currency is like it moves us away from, here's my AirPod Pro. I think AirPod Pro is valued at five shoes. So it just creates a common way of actually exchanging value across the world. The fiat currencies, right? So what is the normal currencies that we have in our pockets, that we hold in bank accounts, are basically based on, you know some assumptions and some trust of like I'm holding this much, assets, or I'm holding this much reserve, or in some cases back in the day gold, and the value of this is based on that. It's very much in the real world. With cryptocurrencies, they're not issued by one central bank that is saying, here's the value, right? And here's the fiat, or here's the piece of paper. And there's, if you can come to us and we'll guarantee it. There isn't that piece. But basically, it's the network that generates those currencies, and there has to be a trust as well. So the trust element doesn't really move, doesn't really change. If we think that the network is really valuable, and there's a lot of areas and ways you can make it valuable. Maybe there's utility out of this network, or maybe with Bitcoin there's a limited supply and a very predictable cadence of how the currency is being generated. Um, it gives people trust that this is something valuable because it's rare, no one is controlling it, it's exchangeable, it's something that I can do something with it, it's transferable. Um, Similar to currency, similar to regular currency. So the difference being, instead of one central bank controlling it, no one can control it basically. And so the value is just determined by supply and demand, and how much trust people think this has. But there's not going to be an inflation. There's not going to be a devaluation of the currency because the government decides to print money. The difference here is going to be, that is that those mean it can exist technically if you program it in that way. You can program inflation, but typically, like the way currencies are, the cryptocurrencies are, those who are successful have those guardrails against that.
Got it. Okay.
I
Thank
don't know
you
if
so
I made
much.
it easier or worse, or even more confusing than before. So
I mean,
sorry.
I think we could do a whole nother podcast, well, series, not even episodes on it. But no, thank you for that, and I hope that does make it clearer for some people as well. So yeah, thank you, Zia. And now you have had a huge impact during your tenure at Credit Karma within the product space. You're now CPO at Ramp. So I wanted to come on to kind of the role side of it because I feel like it can be a little bit blurred in terms of as you go through the levels of product and understanding, and I think also in different industries some roles mean different things. So what are the main differences that you're experiencing having moved into this role, and that could be particularly kind of within the financial space, or is there kind of like a global thing that you're feeling as well? How do you feel that is now compared to your previous product roles?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that as you move on, like move up in your career, like your role to some extent is doesn't change. Like what you're actually supposed to do doesn't change. So if you're the leader of a function, the way I look at it, whether I'm the GM of the business, the CEO, or the CPO, there's like three things that are my responsibility. One is direction. I need to tell us we're going this way, and not just any direction. Like this is a direction where we are going to win in this space with high conviction. Uh, so it's not just like pointing a finger in direction. It's like, well, I think this is the right way, and obviously not just me, but like collectively getting people empowered to believe in that. But setting the direction is really the number one. Second is going to be like setting up the organization to actually go after this direction. So this is building the team, the org, um, to get there. And I think lastly, and the team, the org is like the talent. Ultimately, it's like finding the right talent, the right complementarity of skills, the right yin and yang between planners and thinkers, creators and artists, right, to get to the vision that you need. And then lastly, I see it as like the ways of working and the empowerment. So now that you have the vision, you have the people, how are we gonna get them to work together in a cohesive way? They're all singing really the same harmony or whatever metaphor you want to use, but also empower them, unblock them, give them the right rituals so that the magic happens, and give them the right safety to like fail, set up the right uh, type of meetings and or forums, right? So that the ideation happens, the planning happens, the execution is up, accountable, like all these tiny things that eventually, will will make your machine kind of work and move with hopefully with the velocity in the right direction.
Yeah. And I love how you put that in the beginning, which is it doesn't really change. And I think what a lot of people will struggle with, and I've seen this particularly in the product world, is not knowing when to take that next step up as well. And I've experienced this myself where I do feel the same, where not much has changed in terms of my day to day. My principles kind of remain the same. It just may mean that I'm in charge of a group of products or maybe a bigger team, etc. But having said that, and with the issue of people not knowing when to take the leap into their promotion or going to the next step, what would you say is like the one thing that you need to be able to say, yep, I've got this thing now, I'm able to move into the next step of my career and go into that higher place, whatever that might be?
Um, I don't think I'm gonna have like the silver bullet answer for you on this one. I really look at careers as like necessarily like zigzags, not necessarily like a one slope trajectory of like just keep going up. Like personally, I went from like a manager of like 10, 15 people down to an IC and then back up to a manager and then senior manager and then senior director. And then I had like 3 layers under me. And then I decided like I wanted to go back to being an IC again. And I rebuilt the team from scratch. And and so I think I have a very unusual background basically with this stuff because I necessarily I think more about career progression, about you doing your diligence on what motivates you as a person and what is the next challenge for you,
Yeah.
and knowing your areas of strength and things that you want to keep working on, and then finding the right challenge to get there. And to me, it's always about maybe three things that I always trying to look for. It's can I have like is this gonna go in a big direction? Can I have a big impact? Like, can I actually if I join this, if I take on this role, if I take on this new step, can I would I be able to actually put my finger and say I did this and contributed to the growth? And then lastly, like, am I going to be surrounded with people who are going to challenge me, make me a better, smarter, more humble, more curious person? Um, and whenever I'm able to answer this as yes, yes, yes. Like I take the jump, and sometimes the jump means a promotion or like being a leader, and sometimes the jump for me meant I'm gonna leave everything. I'm gonna move countries. I'm gonna go back to being a one ICPM, doing like 15 PRDs at the same time, and then building the team again. But because the challenge was more interesting and my impact on the challenge and the learnings from me coming back from that challenge and the people around it all made sense.
Yeah.
So I see it a bit differently. But so far it's worked out in the sense that like if you look at my resume, like, oh, he's been checking boxes and going up, but uh, there's some madness behind that, and more like personal like serendipity in the way I do it.
Yeah, it sounds very authentic, and I again, I love how you put that. It's a zigzag, and I think it's very important for people to know it's not always going to go like this in a straight line upwards. There are going to be things along the way, and also I feel like we do take risks with taking these leaps, and sometimes it may not always work out. So having a zigzag is completely okay as your as that imaginary graph in terms of your career progression. Thank you for sharing that, Ziad. And that also brings me perfectly to my next question, which is what is your most proudest moment of your product career?
Um, when we launched Credit Karma in the UK, it was like probably the biggest, most challenging thing we've ever done. Like at that point in time as a company, because we effectively did like five big things at the same time. We set up uh, a new platform. We brought services from Credit Karma's platform in the US into the UK. We built a new application layer on top of it. We were at the same time migrating 3 million users from a company that we had acquired. And they all had to like happen and like so many other layers I'm not even mentioning in terms of security, GDPR, like all sorts of things that we didn't even like weren't even things that we had built as a company before. There were new things coming into a new market, not even thinking about like the application and like the user experiences that were very localized for our British consumers. um, Having all that culminate and happen like in one night over like multiple hours, and it was like a big bang. um, that was huge for me. That was amazing, and seeing that effectively becoming a great product, with like 4.5 and 4.7 average star reviews on Google and Apple and Trustpilot, and seeing, basically giving, like, hearing testimonials of people saying like how this helped them, like in the day to day, like put money in their pocket, get them out of trouble, give them access to credit, cheaper rates, better rates. um, the power of doing something so hard in like concentrated in like in one day at some point, at one point in time, and then the impact that you have it on millions of customers, that together for me was the proudest moment.
Amazing. It sounds absolutely wonderful. And I think this is also an area of fintech where people don't always, I guess, appreciate it when they look from the outside, is the amount of customer satisfaction you get from doing things for individuals, is quite amazing. And also, in all that chaos, I'm sure you found and learned a lot of things about the localization side of it. And I certainly experienced this when we were building Nomo Bank. You think building a product for another region is okay, but there are so many nuances and so many localization features or whatever it might be. Even just the language is completely different, and even though US is an English speaking country, I'm sure there's so many nuances that you found. So no, bravo to you. I think that's an amazing achievement, and it's I thank you for sharing that with us, and I hope you continue to have more proud moments in your product career, and I can ask you about them later on in the near future. Now, I do have a tradition on the podcast where I ask my guests if they could share the best piece of advice that you've ever received, or your own piece of advice that you'd like to give out to the world.
um, I was I was thinking about this one the other day. The best piece of advice, what I received in my first job, like at BCG, and we were, when you're a consultant, you're like helping others. You're
Mm,
going in, you're understanding the landscape, the problems, you're developing a baseline and then a plan, and you present it, right? And I remember one of my colleagues, who was a few years older than me, with some experience under his belt, and he's like, you should be your own careers consultant as well. He's like, you're not only like consulting others. At some point in time, you need to be your own client, and you have to do that own work for yourself. Um, and that really like landed with me, in the sense that I'm like, he's right. And if I don't do that homework, no one's gonna do it for me. um, and that means like knowing really well, like, what you want and who you are, and what things make you click and what things give you energy and don't give you energy, right? And then planning, right, and then giving your own recommendation. um, so that advice really stuck with me over time. And my version of the advice I would give to others is really built on that, which is, I think it's very easy to just follow the herd. It's very easy to just say, this is the next shiny thing. Everyone's doing AI. Let me do AI. Everyone is doing this. Let me do this. Right. Or like, oh, it's been 2 years. I need to become I need to start managing people because I cannot grow if they don't manage people.
mm,
Those are all like external signals. And it's just us looking at the herd, not necessarily thinking like, what do we want? Where are we doing? And I think when you are more authentic and you do that homework, uh, when opportunities come, instead of just jumping here and there and being extremely scattered, end up becoming more concentrated.
mm,
When you're ready to do a next jump in your career, instead of applying to 17 different places, you end up going to two or three, but you go deep with them, and you basically do your homework. And then when you present yourself to them, they're like, we'd be stupid not to hire this person because
mm,
he's clearly the right person for us. And I remember I did that. I remember before joining Credit Karma, it was like I had two companies I wanted to join. And like it was that's it. And I created like 50-page deck on like how I would help Credit Karma, right? And I didn't present that deck, but like having done that work, when
mm,
I met the co-founders, it was like, it was just like this, right? And they saw that I was very genuine, and that genuineness came through. And then then magic happens. And so be your authentic self, do that homework. Don't try, don't be distracted by the next shiny thing. That would be my advice.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for your responses as well. It's very much exciting what you're doing, and I think what's going on in the fintech space is always great to get an insight into that world and sharing it with everyone else. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, both at Ramp and in everything else that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. It was a pleasure talking to you.